Rudy's Revelation.
Google me, bitch!
This is all a conspiracy. No, you know that it's a conspiracy there.
The New World Order.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. It is July 9th, 2024. Sorry for the late start today, but welcome. And the top stories today. Well, Trump is sitting back and watching the Democrats implode. Will the electorate and the liberals finally see the wool being pulled over their eyes? It's doubtful. Certainly not Whoopi Goldberg. We'll talk about her poopy episodes and more headlines coming up right now. All right, first up here, I just want to say something about the Wall Street Journal here. I was reading this article and then I was trying to track it back down because I kept getting running into a wall here. I guess they changed the story. The original headline for this story was Biden to congressional Democrats, "I'm running this race till the end." Apparently this is in quotes, and maybe he didn't say that, because what the article ended up changing to is that Biden tries to tamp down Democrats' talk of a new candidate. Prominent House Democrats say voters no longer see Biden as credible in the race against Trump. This is obvious, and this is what I was talking about right when we started here, the episode. Just want to ask you to engage the channel, please. Give me a thumbs up, like, and share the podcast. Leave a comment. Any engagement helps me out tremendously. But the gist of today's episode is twofold. One, that this is a watershed moment, and whether the electorate or the people that haven't been drinking the blue Kool-Aid, particularly Democrats and liberals, whether or not they're going to realize that they've been lied to the whole time about Biden's condition, which has been worsening. He's not the same guy he was in 2020. He's not the guy he was 2 years ago, 1 year ago, even 6 months or a month ago. So his cognitive abilities are getting worse, and now with the news coming out about a neurologist that has been visiting him within the past year quite a bit, and this has to do with trying to alleviate his stiff gait, which everybody sees. Even if they can get him to read from a teleprompter, you see the way he walks, and he walks like a doddering old man. So going back to the headlines here, this is from Bloomberg. Biden's biggest donors left powerless to sway him to end bid. And I'm reading right from the story here from Bloomberg. But what's clear to these ultra-rich bankers and investors is that there's no obvious path to making the change happen themselves. Some also see sitting on the sidelines as a savvy option, wanting to avoid fueling a narrative that financiers are pushing Biden out. Well, what we have to understand here is that financiers are controlling politicians, whether they're pushing them in, pushing them out, or pushing them around. That's what we have to understand, is that the financiers, the bankers, which are the largest corporations in the hierarchy of political power in this oligarchy. It's a corporate oligarchy. It's fascism, but not the kind of fascism that Trump is Hitler and all this stuff. That is it's a false dichotomy that they're portraying. Actually, Biden is the establishment fascist. He works with the corporations who control the establishment. They established the establishment. They established the hierarchy of power based on money, capital, really. And communist or socialist countries are no different. Everything runs on capital, regardless of what kind of political system you may be running. But the point is here is that the financiers and the big banks are running Biden. whether they pushed him in or pushed him out or were controlling him. They're certainly pulling the strings, but they don't want to fuel the narrative that they're pushing him out. And they've already given him all the money. And so it's not like they can cut off money. It's very late in the game, but I'm going to stick with my assessment that this was all planned. Now, it is also planned that Biden wants to stay in and will stay in, which will force the next move of removal, which is another health episode that they're already telegraphing. So, which the CIA might be involved in. Here's your milk, President Biden, and in the milk is something that's going to either give him a stroke or something. He'll disappear. Well, he has really disappeared from public view. Apparently, all these media things, you're supposed to be on a big media blitz. Well, he's off the trail now. And his surrogate, his wife, Jill Biden, is in. Maybe Jill Biden will run for president. Who knows? But we're going to talk about Kamala Harris and all the other things. But let's get back to this Bloomberg article. Absent a more serious health incident, I told you they're telegraphing, between now and the election, it now seems eminently clear that Biden will be the candidate, Ackman wrote. If you don't know Peter Ackman, he's a big tech investor. Ackman said that in the general election matchup was Biden versus Trump. I am definitely voting Trump. And then it goes on to say Biden's response among Washington observers. The feeling is that the next few days will be critical for Biden's candidacy. Already, at least 9 House members have called on him to step aside, and the House Democratic Caucus will meet Tuesday morning, that's this morning, which could lead to more defections because they're trying to figure out what they're going to do here. But that's Peter Ackman. He was leaning Trump anyway, so it's not that. But what he is telegraphing is absent a more serious health incident, which I think is coming because there are 3 avenues here that the establishment could go down. 25th Amendment, they can convince Biden's cabinet, really blackmail the cabinet or bribe them through various means to 25th Amendment Biden. They could discover or, I should say, reveal more evidence of Biden's wrongdoings, his illicit influence peddling with his family, to push forth an impeachment, which they could get Democrats to get on board with. That would leave Biden in disgrace, but that would hurt their election. So they're less likely to do that. But it is certainly a way of removal. And if the evidence is so glaring to make it, they can push it all on Biden in any case and remove him. And then the last avenue, of course, is another serious health incident, which could easily be made happen by people within his inner circle, the intelligence agencies, etc. Now, the reason this is all getting dire is because, as the New York Post reports, White House admits Parkinson's expert has examined Biden, but says only for his annual physical, which is once a year. So Karine Jean-Pierre said, no, that was just part of his physical, and he always gets, but that's not true. Because OAN is reporting that Biden's primary doctor did meet with a Parkinson's disease expert. Washington Times reports Parkinson's doctor made 10 White House visits, logs show. And ABC News, finally, Parkinson's expert visited White House 8 times in 8 months, met with Biden's doctor. So they're confirming it. And their story goes on to say an expert on Parkinson's disease visited the White House 8 times over 8 months in a span between last July, that's last year, and March of this year. So more recently since January, including one visit with the president's personal physician, according to White House visitor logs. Now, I just have to say ABC is kind of mischaracterizing the point. They're saying that the visitor logs show that he met with Biden's personal physician. The visitor logs show that he visited the White House 8 times. It doesn't say definitively how many times he met with the president's personal physician. Why would he be at the White House? Is it just for lunch? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, and they're trying to mischaracterize it, that he only met with Biden's personal physician once. There's no way to know that. That's what the White House says. The doctor, Kevin Kennard, and if you know anything about intelligence agencies, they love playing the name game, which is like a word game. They name their assets or agents with certain names that are kind of a wink and a nudge and a telegraph to what they're doing. Like, let's say you'd have a reporter that constantly verbally accosts the president and they call him Acosta, or they have a physician named Kennard, which is going to forward a canard, so to speak. So that's just my little insight into that. Just going back to the article here, Kevin Kennard, a neurologist and movement disorder specialist who works at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, according to the logs, prior to July 2023, had visited the White House only once in November 2022. So this is an existing condition. And we had been talking about the president's gait as a sign of neurological disorder, particularly associated with Alzheimer's, but now we know, and if you get more specific with the disease, it's actually Parkinson's, not any sort of senility. But back to the story here, asked repeatedly on Monday night's briefing. If you didn't see this, Karine Jean-Pierre blew, the whole thing blew up because you actually had the mainstream media for once actually attacking the press secretary or being very forceful and with repeated questions about certain issues. And that's what the White House press corps is supposed to do, is to be not only resilient, but tenacious. So going back to this article, asked repeatedly at Monday's briefing, Karine Jean-Pierre refused to say that the neurologist ever treated the president or consulted on his care, citing privacy concerns, but did say that Biden was not being treated for Parkinson's disease. ABC News chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce pressed Jean-Pierre on reporting about Kennard's visit with the president's personal physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor. You're refusing to say if he was there to evaluate the president or if he was consulting on the president's health. So what then was the meeting about? Jean-Pierre said that she could not elaborate on the meeting because we cannot confirm or speak on to the names that you're providing to me. It's out of security. Right, because it's a national security issue. If you start saying that the president doesn't have all his faculties, adversaries might take advantage. Of course they will, and they have been. But we've known this for some time, and his condition is getting worse, and it isn't a cheap fake. And why would you even trust anything Karine Jean-Pierre has to say, or any of the mainstream media, really, when they've been lying and pulling the wool over the eyes of the American people for so long? And that's why it's a watershed moment. Are people going to realize and awaken to the fact that the establishment goes to extreme lengths and they have no ethical, they have no ethics. So they are not worried about, you're going to find out we've been lying to you. They'll just use plausible deniability. We didn't know. We were reassured by the White House that he didn't have an issue, blah, blah, blah. But anybody could look at the back tapes, outtakes and see that this is a person in physical and mental decline, speaking of President Biden. Going on with more stories here, Fox News, House Dems calling for Biden to step down, won't say if they'll back him in the general election. Growing number of Democrats voicing concerns over President Biden's fitness after poor debate showing. We don't have to go back to the debate anymore. The debate was the watershed, perhaps. But those of us in the know have known this has been going on forever. We're hoping that, as with conspiracy theorists, is that when something comes true, will people in the general public, the uninformed masses, misinformed, disinformed masses, will they finally come to the realization, oh, if this is true, well, what if maybe the Republicans were right about everything else? Maybe they're right about the Biden family's illicit activity. We could only hope. I mean, it's not going to happen with the blue Kool-Aid drinkers because they're in denial, and the postmodernists believe that you create your own reality and it doesn't matter what external forces may show you. You know, you have your belief system, and that's all there is to it. All right. Going to the Washington Free Beacon now, has trouble putting two sentences together. Representative Don Beyer, who's a Democrat who compared Biden to Jesus, sings a different tune. Virginia Democrat reportedly calls on Biden to step aside now. Going to the article here, Beyer, Democrat from Virginia, Punchbowl reported on Sunday, called Biden a very, very fragile man who also really has trouble putting two sentences together. During a Democratic leadership call, Beyer went on to say that his perfect world is Joe, in deciding after talking to leader Hakeem Jeffries, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, others, step aside now, let Kamala run as an incumbent, which I think would make things even stronger. I don't think it's going to make things stronger. As Trump said, Kamala is weak and she's a mess too, and that actually either one of them would do very poorly against Trump. But they're thinking they can't run the president for a myriad of different reasons. Democrats are worried about losing not just the presidential ticket, but down ballot races as well. But there's national security issues here that people have to consider. You know, Biden was never really running the country. It's a cadre, it's a council, it's a star chamber of elites that are calling the shots, whether it's Obama or it's not Obama. Obama isn't even, he's not the pinnacle. He is a minion of the greater political elites above them, the corporations and the rich individuals. One of the most important things today is understanding today is, why is Trump so quiet? Barron's is reporting less is more. Trump quiet as Biden flounders. And I'll go right to the story here. Since announcing his White House bid, Donald Trump has taken every opportunity to paint President Joe Biden as so weak and compromised that he would struggle to make it to November's election, let alone serve another 4 years. Yet with a Democratic president suffering perhaps the worst week of his political career, his Republican rival appears to have resisted what has been a potent urge to get out in the public and gloat. Well, we never do that, because why? We know it's an Asian proverb: never interfere with the enemy when they're destroying themselves. So that's exactly what Trump is doing here. Let the Democrats eat their own, let them figure it out. And then when the dust has settled, if it ever has, Trump knows how to grab the headlines, when to make appropriate announcements. So the VP announcement isn't coming anytime soon. He's going to hold that as a card up his sleeve in reserve to see exactly what's going to happen with the Democrats, with Biden. You don't want to jump too soon because you can't take it back. So he's waiting it out, which is wise strategically. Trump has never been for lack of strategy, that's for sure. The Democrats don't know what they're going to do, but Trump's going to golf. He golfs with Lindsey Graham. They're going to talk about the same thing. They're going to talk about national security. They're going to not. The Republicans, I don't know why other Republicans aren't out, because they should come out and say it's not. Where are the other Republicans? They should be saying right now, it's not about the election. It is about national security. Not only should Biden not run as president for another term, President Biden should step down as president immediately as a case of national security. The problem is Biden's insurance policy. Kamala Harris, he picked her as a DEI hire, but specifically as insurance to keep people from trying to remove him, either for his illicit activity or for his age, because it would leave Kamala Harris in office. So the establishment is going to get rid of Biden, and the Republicans are biting their tongue because they believe he should step down, which I believe they should be calling for. However, that might play into the hands of the Democrats, so they have to be careful here. Maybe they shouldn't do that, because then they would be left with Kamala Harris. She would serve as president for a month or two. Maybe they would paint a glowing picture of her, and then she would be a stronger candidate against Trump. So it's hard to say. Maybe it's right to be quiet. But somebody, not just James Carville, somebody should be saying President Biden should step down as president right now because of his lack of cognitive ability. Somebody has to say it. Somebody. A Democrat, an independent, a Republican, somebody must say maybe it shouldn't come from the Republican Party. Maybe it should come from a Republican strategist. Who knows? Karl Rove. Somebody should be saying that Biden is so impaired, we're vulnerable now, and he should step down. So, I mean, and stop thinking about elections. It's really the United States national security. But in any case, let's move on with news. Another headline from the Wall Street Journal, how Biden's inner circle worked to keep signs of aging under wraps. Aides kept a tight rein on the president's travel plans, news conference, public appearances, and meetings with donors while Biden's stumbles became increasingly obvious. There you go. There is the wool being pulled over the eyes of the public, stated in a headline from the Wall Street Journal. Some folks might have seen this. I think it was on Gutfeld last night. It was on a few conservative news programs where it showed apparently leaked cue cards, flash cards for the president that showed instruction for President Biden. And this is how infirmed he is. It's indicating how infirmed he is. It was a flash card of a picture of a stage with a podium on it, and it says, walk to podium. So not only does he need a verbal instruction, a written instruction, walk to podium, but they have to provide a picture so he knows what a podium looks like. And so it doesn't just say walk to podium, and like he goes and walks to the bathroom or to a chair, or you've seen him walk around. He doesn't know where he's going. He's looking this way. He's looking that way. He doesn't know where to go. So increasingly he needs flashcards. And it used to work where he had notes with the reporters' faces and their names, and then the questions that those people would ask, and then the answer to those questions. This guy cannot, he's mentally infirmed. And he's not only mentally infirmed, he's physically infirmed. And going to the humorous headline here from One American News, Whoopi Goldberg says she supports Biden and doesn't care if he poops his pants. Well, there's a dedicated Democrat for you. And, Democrats never have a problem with pooping in your pants because they like to poop in their pants. They think it's cool to poop your pants because it's freedom. You really have the freedom to poop your pants if you want to. And that's why they all support it, because they like it. It's a fun thing to do for them. But the point here, you might have seen the clip from Whoopi Goldberg on The View, went on to say, and I'm going to read from the article here, then quote it, I don't care if he's pooped his pants. I don't care if he can't put a sentence together. Show me he can't do the job, and then I'll say, okay, maybe it's time to go, Goldberg said. If you can't put a sentence together, you can't do the job. One of the main jobs of the President of the United States is articulate policy positions and to answer questions from the press. If you can't put a sentence together, then you can't do either. That's part of the job. Then you got to go. Also, you got to be able to articulate policy ideas, positions, and strategy with your staff. And if you can't put two sentences together, well, you can't do that either. Can he write anything? He didn't write down any notes during the debate. It appeared he had notes, but he didn't write down any notes. He was flipping through pages of something he wasn't supposed to have, but they never showed him furiously scribbling or anything. I don't know if he could read or write. I don't know if he could write, but even his flashcards were written in big, bold, short sentences, so who knows? Anyway, Whoopi went on to say, I have poopy days all the time. So she obviously poops her pants. Like I said, liberals like to do that. That's fun. I step in so much poo you can't even imagine. That's disgusting. Is it poop coming from her? I don't know. Who's the poop coming from? Goldberg said as the crowd chuckled. Now, I'm not running the world, but I don't know anybody who doesn't step in stuff at some point. So I'm just simply saying, yeah, there are 2 debates, and if he's going to do what he needs to do for the second debate, I'll join any crew that says get rid of him. If he can't do what he needs to do for the second debate, I'll join any crew that gets rid of him. She made about as much sense as Joe Biden. Okay, if the president of the United States is shitting in his pants, that's not stepping in poo metaphorically. You know, you step in shit, that's a figurative turn of phrase to say, I made a mistake. The Republicans and conservatives and the detractors of President Biden are literally saying he shits his pants, not shits his pants as in made a mistake figuratively. They literally mean shits his pants, to use the phrase literally correctly. Actually shits his pants. And he can't put a sentence together. So she's going to wait till September debate. He won't make the September debate. And that's a month or 2 from now. And that he's going to be in even worse shape. Now, I don't know how they're going to be able to prop him up during the second debate, but that doesn't leave much time for the Democrats to get shit together. And speaking of getting shit together, we have the Atlantic Monthly now stating the problem with coronating Kamala Harris. And the Atlantic Monthly, if you didn't know, is a liberal rag, so to speak. It's propaganda. It's flowery propaganda. I had so many people trying to get me to read the Atlantic, and I don't even like the National Review when it's too flowery. You know, it's just like people like to hear themselves talk. When those type of people write, that's why I like journalism. It's straight and to the point. There's not all that fluff in there. In any case, going back to the Atlantic, but an automatic coronation of Harris would be a grave mistake. The number 2 spot has never been a guarantee of a promotion to the top job. Only 6 vice presidents have ever been elevated to the presidency via an election. 12 have run and lost. 5 have even failed to get their party's endorsement. Yet some are arguing that Harris's nomination could be a fait complete if Biden steps aside. A fait complete basically means it's already done. And that's what James Clyburn is saying, is that, oh, she's go ahead, put her in. She's an idiot. And I mean that in the nicest way possible, is that you got to be sort of a philosopher king, and I don't mean king in the monarchical sense. You have to have a certain amount of intellect, I believe, to be president. You can be a pretty linear thinking administrator. I'm not saying you can't, but I say the best presidents have the intellectual capacity to think outside the box, but also have the administrative skill to be a task master. But you have to understand strategy, and if you can think outside the box, and if you have a wealth of knowledge in your head, especially of history, then you can understand how to apply certain strategies that may have worked in the past, or you may have an opportunity to employ a certain strategy that may mirror something that happened in the past or be similar, or just develop a brand new strategy for a new situation. And certainly you have to put 2 sentences together. You can't just go the bus on the wheels go round and round, as Kamala, you know, the way the way Trump described her as talking in Limerick or Iran. He meant limerically. He said she talks in rhyme. She doesn't really talk in rhyme. She talks limerically. It's just a very strange way of talking, because she gets these turn of phrases and she puts them in there, and then so she keeps going back to that as being some sort of as a verbal as some sort of a verbal artifice, or a way of speaking that make her sound smart, but it really, when she employs it, it makes her sound more stupid. So moving on to other news here from the Insider, Biden and congressional Democrats are headed toward an all-out war. That's without saying. The article goes on, the worst possible outcome for Biden is the public consensus emerges among congressional Democrats that he must go, that the party leaders follow suit, issuing a call for him to drop out, though Biden insisted it wouldn't happen during his Friday interview. Perhaps the most disastrous outcome for Democratic Party is something in the middle. A large minority of House Democrats call for Biden to step aside, but he remains the nominee, irreparably damaged by the dissent within his own party. It's that scenario that Richie Torres of New York alluded to in a statement Monday morning, that said that a public speculation about Biden was creating and compounding the problem, that the process by which we decide how to move forward matters as much as the decision itself. Regardless of where one stands on the question of President Biden's political future, the intra-party mixed messaging strikes me as deeply self-destructive. The drip, drip, drip of public statements, no confidence, only to serve to weaken the president, who has already been weakened not only by the debate, but the debate about the debate. And now you understand why Republicans and Trump are sitting on the sidelines, chuckling with their arms folded. Let your enemy destroy himself, or do not interrupt when your enemy is destroying himself. And that's exactly what they're doing, because they don't know what to do. Because most of the Democratic politicians were convinced by the propaganda being spitted out by the Democratic Party, by the Biden administration, and by the mainstream media, that what you see is cheap fakes, is Republican propaganda or opposition research trying to destroy the Democratic nominee. And people believe that. People have believed that. Democrats have believed that for years. They drank too much blue Kool-Aid, and they think everybody who listens to Joy Reid or Chuck Scarborough believes that it's the Democrats and the Nazis they're trying to get in Hitler, and they're going to do anything to get Hitler in. That's just not the case. There is the truth, and there is, by the Enlightenment thinkers, how we arrive at a fact. And there are the postmodernists who believe that somehow your reality, your truth, somehow means anything in the collective reality or the greater truth that exists. But they don't. They don't, because they have their hands over their ears, la, 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 la. I don't want to hear that Biden is mentally unfit, physically unfit to be president. And he has been. Now, he had it more together in 2020, but he was campaigning from his basement, and during the coronavirus epidemic, that he was campaigning in such a way that he wasn't under severe scrutiny, and the mainstream media was helping that idea along. Okay. I think this is the last headline here. Fox News radio station parts ways, quote unquote, with host after admitting White House gave her the questions before Biden interview. The story goes on to say WURD, Word Radio, is not a mouthpiece for the Biden or any other administration. On July 3rd, the post-debate interview with President Joe Biden was arranged and negotiated independently by Word Radio host Andrea Lawful Sanders without the knowledge, consultation, or collaboration with Word management. Uh-oh. But they let it go on anyway. So they're just covering their ass. Plausible deniability. The interview featured predetermined questions provided by the White House, which violates our practice of remaining an independent media outlet accountable to our listeners. As a result, Ms. Lawful Sanders and WURD Radio have mutually agreed to part ways, effective immediately. In other words, she was fired. Specifically, she got to keep money and she wasn't listed as fired to affect her reemployment in other places. And so that has a lot to do with how people are let go, the mutually part ways. But to say that a black radio stations is independent and, is somehow not affiliated with a Democratic Party or the Democrat, that's just ridiculous. Like Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. Then stop voting Democrat. Then you'll be independent. But the problem is they're ill-informed. And I don't want to use the word lazy, but you have to be a little more tenacious, like the press, the journalists are supposed to be, about getting information. So they're misinformed, they're uninformed, and they allow themselves to be misinformed or disinformed by the powers that be, intelligence agencies, propaganda, what have you. You want to know the truth? Go outside and ask people if they were better off under Trump than under Biden economically. Ask people what they think about immigration, what the Biden administration has done. Ask if they like to be in a war with Russia, possibly World War III and a nuclear conflict, ultimately. Ask people. Go out and ask. Ask people that might have seen Biden lately and ask your people in your black community if they believe that President Joe Biden is mentally infirm, and if they believe that they were lied to about his condition over the years. And then vote accordingly. That's the point, is that maybe you should vote for Donald Trump. I'm not saying you should. I'm going to. And the only reason is not because Trump's Hitler. The main reason I'm voting for Trump is when I voted for Trump in 2016, I was a one-issue voter. And that was because of the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, was another international trade deal which would suck jobs out of the United States, move them over to China, ultimately. And that was the reason. But since then, it's a lot other. Now it's the economy, it's immigration, obviously trade deals, but your stance on China, ending the wars, because I'll tell you one thing about the American electorate, they don't like war. And they're tired of being gaslit into saying, oh, we have to do this because we have to save democracy in Ukraine, even though there are no elections in Ukraine anymore, so it's not a democracy. And the fact is that Ukraine is the most, or one of the most corrupt countries on the planet, and that we're funneling hundreds of billions of dollars there doesn't make sense against a nuclear power, which the Ukrainians can't win. It's not a war they can win, and the whole war started because of NATO and Western aggression. Because NATO hasn't changed their mission statement since the fall of the Soviet Union, which they should have. If they want to be a bulwark against Russian aggression, great, but by putting special forces and intelligence listening posts right up to the Russian border, that's no way to build a peace. In any case, that's it for me. Thanks for joining me today. I don't know if we're going to have an episode with Tuesdays with Perry tonight. It'll be episode 82. I haven't talked to him yet, so stay tuned for that possibility. But thanks for joining me. Please engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, give me a thumbs up. And if I don't see you tonight, I'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget, you're under attack psychologically, biologically. Stay hip to the trick. Respect.
Google me, bitch! Google me!
Rudy's Revelation.
So long, gay boys!